Thanks for joining us for the Valley's People. My first guest today is Captain Ken Hopper, who is co-founder of the Newcastle Region Maritime Museum. Captain Hopper, welcome.
Thank you.
Trying to find out a little bit about the maritime history of the Port of Newcastle, I thought was fascinating, because one of the first things I discovered was that in the 1890s, Newcastle was the 7th busiest port in the world. Is that right?
That is correct, mainly on sailing ships in those days. Yeah. And there was quite a big trade between here and South America and San Francisco and places like that brought all the famous old sailing ships to Newcastle.
It's not easy to really picture what the 7th busiest port really means. I mean, we've got those old photographs of 3 and 4 sailing ships together aside at the wharf. It must have been quite a size.
I believe so. There was up to in excess of 100 ships in the port at times, really? And with ships waiting outside as well. I believe the record was something like 140 ships around the port at one time.
So ships waiting outside Newcastle is not a recent phenomenon at all?
Apparently not.
1890s. Was there much of that era preserved when the port was so busy?
Well, nobody really made any effort to establish a museum or such to preserve this history. A lot of old items were collected by families of the sailing ship people and from various wrecks around the place. And these, of course, were mainly in private homes, but there was nothing really on exhibit in Newcastle.
And this was a pretty good port for wrecks, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Even just around the Oyster Bank at the entrance, history says about 50-odd vessels were lost in that area.
50?
So if you take the coastline around here, well, in excess of 100 ships have been lost in the history of the port.
And you were harbour master here in Newcastle for 17 years?
14 years.
14 years?
Yes.
Yes. And did you get an interest in the history of the port during that time, or were you just too busy?
Well, it came gradually. The first real interest I got was when it was first announced that Fort Scratchy was to be released for public purposes, when Captain Jim Fletcher and Mr. Bert Lovett, whose grandfather had been assistant harbour master back in the 1860s and was lost in a lifeboat, approached me with the idea of the three of us getting together and trying to do something about establishing a maritime museum with the idea of Fort Scratchley in mind, though we didn't actually get Fort Scratchley until 1978.
So it all began with just 3 people sitting around talking?
Well, yes, we approached the then Lord Mayor, Alderman Doug McDougall. We called a public meeting, which was very well responded to. We had about 100 people turned up for this meeting.
That's good for a public meeting.
So we immediately formed a committee and started work. It took us 2 years out at the Lambton Mechanics Institute to get a collection together and open to the public. So it was 2 years hard work. I was the president, and my main job was contacting people and trying to scrounge exhibits from where we happened to hear something was going. We chased everything we could get.
I know what I want to ask you, and it was somebody I said I'm going to talk to Captain Ken Hopper and the Valley's People, and he dropped something, so it leads me to ask you, I just can't work out why they call you the pirate. It's hardly the respect for a harbour master of 14 years.
Well, I guess, I suppose you could be proud of this. I think all the team at the Maritime Museum could all be called a good team of scroungers and con men and pirates, if you like to put it this way, because we've really gone out of our way where anything we felt we wanted that we knew was available, by fair means or foul, we went out to get these things, and we've achieved quite a lot by this method.
Yeah, but your fame must have spread, because when I said Captain Hopper, they said, oh, you mean the pirate? There's got to be a better story than that, I think.
Oh, yes. Well, part of it, of course, was the Cygna, when she went ashore, this was in 74, during the salvage operations and when the vessel was virtually abandoned. With the underhand knowledge of the owners, they gave us more or less didn't object to us, let's put it that way, helping ourselves to stuff that was on board, because it was only being vandalised anyway.
Yes.
So by all sorts of means we got aboard the wreck and collected all types of items there. On one occasion I even had the Army working for me. We had an Army lark out there, and on that occasion we got quite a lot of fittings, one thing or another. I nearly got myself drowned because the lark was absolutely swamped by a sea coming back ashore. So that was one occasion when I was called a pirate, pirating the Cygna.
I'm just glad it didn't end up as a tragedy, though, as a
Oh,
pirate.
no, it wasn't as bad as all that, but it was a bit scary for a minute or two.
Yes. Talking about rescues, some of the most fascinating things relating to the regional museum would be concerned with lifeboats, I think. I mean, you brought the Victoria, wasn't it, from the oak factory
Yes.
down to Newcastle?
Yeah, well, the Victoria was the last of the rescue lifeboats in Newcastle. The lifeboat service actually operated here in excess of 100 years, and Victoria was built about 80-odd years ago, about the mid-1890s. It's the latest type of boat in that time, and she is a very valuable acquisition to preserve, because this type of boat, there's very few of them left in the world. But the history of the lifeboat here was that this, combined with the rocket brigade, were the means of rescuing people from these various shipwrecks that occurred around the coast. And Victoria itself took part in quite a number of famous rescues, including, of course, the Adolphe, which is still left on the end of which is the last sailing shipwreck here, which is still on the northern breakwater. They took the crew from that.
It's just relating history doesn't quite conjure up the spirit, does it, when you think of a ship in distress, in fact, about to be wrecked. And that really is just an open boat with oarsmen, isn't it?
That's right. And
very gallant souls.
Well, these people worked on a similar scheme to the, say, a volunteer fire brigade. They lived in boatmen's cottages. Initially, they were actually around the foot of Fort Scratchley, and then the boatman's cottage was built across the road. That is still there. But the boat's crews used to live in these cottages, and the coxswain there would have a bell in his backyard, and if there was an alarm came up, he'd ring the bell, and the boat crew would turn down, run down to the pilot station and man the boat, and quite often they'd have the pilot steamer or something like this tow them to the vicinity of the wreck, then they'd row into the wreck and try to get alongside and rescue the people. I'm
a little shocked that you use the term bell, because I hear that you're responsible for, you might say salvaging, some might say pinching, a bell off Nobby's breakwater.
Well, it wasn't stolen. No, it's
I'll take your word for it now. I just want to know the story.
Oh, well, this is one of our scrounging efforts. Actually, the bell on Nobby's breakwater was quite an historical bell. It was cast in Newcastle about 100-odd years ago, and weighs probably half a tonne. And this was set up on the end of the breakwater as a fog bell. And every time there was a fog, the poor signalman up at Nobby's used to have to run down along the end of the breakwater and swing on the end of a great hammer to sound this bell at minute intervals. So he'd stop there for the duration of the fog. Well, the bell went out of use this way during the Second World War, when they put in electric foghorns. And it was on the end of the breakwater there, still in its original position. So we knew the history of it and felt, when we got our museum going, that this would be an item that would be an acquisition to preserve for Newcastle.
Very precious item, really, isn't it?
So we made an approach then, not as harbour master, but as president of the Maritime Museum Society, to the Maritime Services Board, and the
old two-hat trick.
And they that's for sure. Anyway, at that time they assessed the scrap value of it, and apparently somebody saw it's too valuable to give away, so it was left there. So after about another 12 months, I got a report that this thing was being, the holding bolts were corroding badly, so I managed to get part of our engineering branch to take the bell down. So this was done on the quiet. So we simply took it down at the pilot station, still kept it on Maritime Service Board property.
Oh, it's all just for safekeeping.
Just for safekeeping. Yeah. So we put it in the corner of the boat shed and buried it in an old rope for 3 years.
Captain Hopper, there's one of those things that fascinates me in the museum itself as you go through, the artist's conception of the butcher boats racing out from Newcastle. What really were they? Because they were actually just rowing boats, weren't they?
They were long, narrow rowing boats, and these were used by the providores primarily, and always known as butcher boats. And these people, to get, when a sailing ship arrived off the port, the master of the ship in those days did all his own business. And it was a question of who could get out there first and do a deal with the captain of the ship for providoring the ship. So these people would row miles to sea sometimes. And then when they came up to the ship, they'd have a hook on the end of a pole with a rope attached to it. They'd simply hook this over the side of the sailing ship's bulwark and then just tow alongside on this hook while they bartered with the captain to try and get the business from the ship.
Did they have spotters along the coast, did they?
Oh yes, it was quite a common thing to have people on headlands looking out for sailing ships, both by the tugboats used to work the same system. First one out would barter to get the work, and so would the butcher boats. So these people would all go out to try and get the jobs from the sailing ships.
Yes. Well, there's so much history here, I guess, that everyone in the valley should be thankful that a group of people could come together in a spirit of preserving our maritime history, because it's not being done everywhere, is it? Shameful.
No, I think we now have probably the best collection of its type in Australia, and it's not through just my efforts. It's been the efforts of a very, very enthusiastic team, and these people have really worked hard. It's been a volunteer effort right up till this year, and we're finally now have a curator, thanks to the help of the state government and the Newcastle City Council. But now we hope to become more professional in our approach to things and develop the museum in that way.
Well, at least it's here to stay, and that's something.
Well, I'm hoping so. I can't see how it will not be, because I think what is collected up there is too valuable to ever be forgotten, and I think it will always be a feature of Newcastle in the future, the Newcastle Maritime Museum.
Well, we can all hope so. Captain
Yes.
Ken Hopper, thank you for your efforts on behalf of us all, and thank you for coming here today.
Right, thank you.